couldn't run a lemonade stand," Dad announced at Thanksgiving, his voice carrying across the dining room. 23 family members turned to look at me. Mom added, "Zero business sense. It's genetic, I think. Some people just don't have it." My brother David laughed, raising his wine glass. "Remember when she tried to start that little computer thing in college? Lasted what, 2 months?" I nodded silently, cutting my turkey. Then Dad's phone buzzed. He glanced down casually, still chuckling. His face changed. The CFO's email appeared on his screen. "All employees must attend mandatory meeting with new majority owner, Ms. Morgenchen, Monday 9 a.m. No exceptions." Dad's fork dropped, clattering against the china. "My name is Morgenchen. I'm 31 years old and I've spent my entire life being the family disappointment. David is 3 years older than me. Golden child. Harvard MBA. Vice President of Operations at Nexus Technologies, the mid-sized tech company my father built from scratch 34 years ago. David was groomed for leadership from the moment he could walk. I was groomed for invisibility. I remember being 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with my first report card. Straight A's. I ran to show my father, who was reviewing spreadsheets in his home office. "Dad, look. All A's." He glanced up briefly. "That's nice, Morgan. Close the door on your way out, please. David and I are going over his science fair project. He's building a working circuit board." I stood there holding my report card, waiting for something more. Anything more. "The door, Morgan." I closed it quietly and went to my room. Through the wall, I could hear them laughing together, father and son bonding over electronics. I stared at my report card until the letters blurred. At 12, I asked to attend a summer coding camp I'd found online. It cost $2,400 for 6 weeks. I'd researched it extensively, printed out the brochure, highlighted the curriculum. Mom looked at the materials and sighed. "Morgan, honey, that's really more David's area. You know how you are with technical things. But I want to learn. I'm good at. You're good at other things. Creative things. Why don't we sign you up for that pottery class instead? Much more your speed." I didn't want pottery. I wanted to understand how computers worked, why they fascinated me, why I spent hours in the library reading programming books I barely understood but couldn't put down. David got a $15,000 car for his 16th birthday. A BMW. Dad made a speech about responsibility and the importance of David representing the Chin family well. For my 16th birthday, I got a $200 gift card to the mall and a lecture about not embarrassing the family with my alternative interests. I'd started teaching myself Python by then, staying up until 2 a.m. watching tutorials, building small programs. When Mom found out, she called it obsessive and suggested therapy. "Normal girls don't spend all night on computers," she said. "It's not healthy. It's not feminine." The defining moment came when I was 19. I'd been accepted to MIT's computer science program. Full scholarship. I'd applied in secret, knowing what the response would be if I asked permission. When the acceptance letter arrived, I made the mistake of hoping. MIT. Dad laughed when I showed him. Actually laughed. "Morgan, let's be realistic. You'd be out of your depth in the first semester. Those programs are for people like David, people with natural aptitude for business and technology. But I have a full scholarship. They want me specifically because of my... What you have is enthusiasm that exceeds your abilities. It's one of your less charming qualities." He turned back to his computer. "You'll go to state like we discussed. Get a general degree. Find a nice job somewhere. Maybe HR or marketing. Something suitable." I went to state. But I didn't study marketing. I double majored in computer science and business administration, graduating summa cum laude. My professors pushed me toward graduate work, but I had other plans. By senior year, I'd already built and sold my first app for $340,000. My family never knew. The money went into an investment account under my LLC, Chin Ventures, registered in Delaware. After graduation, I told my family I'd gotten a job at a small tech company in Seattle. They didn't ask questions. They never asked questions about me. What I actually did was found Meridian Systems with my college roommate Sarah, using the app money as seed capital. We started in her parents' garage, building enterprise security software. The first year we nearly went bankrupt twice. The second year we landed a contract with a Fortune 500 company. The third year we raised $95 million in Series B funding. By year 5, Meridian Systems had 2,400 employees and a valuation of $890 million. By year 7, we'd acquired 6 companies, expanded into AI-driven cybersecurity, and hit a valuation of $2.8 billion. I owned 51% outright. Sarah owned 22%. The remaining 27% was distributed among early employees and investors. Forbes did a profile on me last year. Fortune put me on their 40 under 40 list. I've been interviewed by CNBC, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal. My face has been on magazine covers in airport bookstores my parents have walked past without glancing. They never knew. They never looked. To them, I was still Morgan, the disappointment working some vague tech job in Seattle, probably making $60,000 a year if I was lucky. The secret wasn't hard to keep. They never asked about my life. During our rare phone calls, the conversation centered entirely on David. David's promotion, David's new house, David's wife Brittany's pregnancy, David's latest brilliant strategic initiative at Nexus Technologies. Dad's company. The company David would inherit. The company I'd been quietly buying shares of for 18 months. Thanksgiving at the Chin family estate was always a command performance. 300 guests at the main celebration with family dinner the night before for the inner circle. 23 people total. Parents, David and Brittany, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmother. I almost didn't come this year. The quarterly board meeting for Meridian was scheduled for the following week, and I had a $340 million acquisition to finalize. But something made me RSVP yes. Maybe it was the text David sent. Try not to embarrass us this year. Some of my colleagues from Nexus will be at tomorrow's party. I arrived in a rental car, not my usual driver. Wore a simple black dress, no jewelry except small earrings. Carried a mid-range handbag. The costume of mediocrity I'd perfected over the years. Dinner started normally. David dominated conversation, discussing his latest triumph at Nexus. A new client acquisition worth $12 million annually. Dad beamed. Mom clasped her hands together like David had announced a cure for cancer. $12 million, Uncle Richard said, impressed. That's real business, David. Real numbers. It's about understanding the market, David said, leaning back in his chair with practiced confidence. Reading people. Knowing when to push and when to pull back. Some people have the instinct, some don't. He looked directly at me when he said that last part. Speaking of which, Dad said, turning to me for the first time all evening, how's your little job going, Morgan? Still at that startup. Still there, I said. What is it you do again? Customer service. Something like that. David snorted. Let me guess. They have you answering phones. Responding to emails. Entry-level stuff. I took a bite of turkey. Hum. You know, Mom said, her voice taking on that particular tone of manufactured concern, it's not too late to make a change. You're only 31. Brittany's friend runs an HR department at a very nice accounting firm. I could make a call. I'm fine, Mom. Fine isn't thriving, sweetheart. Fine isn't building something. Look at your brother. Everyone looked at David. David straightened his shoulders, absorbing the attention like sunlight. The thing is, Dad said, setting down his wine glass, business requires a certain kind of mind. Analytical. Decisive. He ticked off each quality on his fingers. Morgan, you're a sweet girl, but you couldn't run a lemonade stand. You've never had the head for it. Mom nodded. Zero business sense. It's genetic, I think. Some people just don't have it. My brother laughed, raising his wine glass. Remember when she tried to start that little computer thing in college? Lasted 2 months? The table erupted in knowing chuckles. Aunt Patricia. Uncle James. Even Cousin Michelle, who'd borrowed $8,000 from me last year and never paid it back. I nodded silently, cutting my turkey. That's when Dad's phone buzzed. What my family didn't know, what they'd never bothered to discover, was that their beloved Nexus Technologies had been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. Dad built the company in the 1990s during the first tech boom. For 2 decades it thrived. But technology evolved and Nexus didn't. Their products became outdated. Their client base eroded. By 2019 they were losing $8 million annually. Dad refused to adapt. We've always done things this way, he told his board. Our reputation will carry us through. It didn't. By 2021, Nexus was approaching bankruptcy. The board pressured Dad to seek outside investment. He resisted until the company's credit line was frozen and 3 major clients jumped ship in a single quarter. That's when Meridian's acquisition team brought me an interesting opportunity. Nexus Technologies is hemorrhaging, my CFO James Morrison reported during our weekly strategy meeting. They're seeking a buyer or major investor. Current valuation is around $180 million, but it's dropping fast. We could acquire controlling interest for maybe $94 million. I looked at the report. Nexus Technologies. My father's company. My brother's kingdom. What's their leadership situation? Founder CEO Harold Chin is resistant to change. His son is VP of Operations, widely regarded as underqualified but protected by nepotism. Board is frustrated but powerless. Classic family business dysfunction. I should have felt something. Triumph maybe. Vindication. Dad, I felt tired. Make the offer through a subsidiary, I said. Anonymous. I don't want them knowing who's buying. Any particular reason for the secrecy? Personal. James didn't push. He'd worked with me for 6 years and knew when to stop asking questions. Over the following 18 months, Meridian, through 3 different subsidiary companies, acquired 81% of Nexus Technologies' outstanding shares. The purchases were structured to avoid disclosure requirements, spread across multiple transactions below reporting thresholds. Dad never knew his company had been sold out from under him. The board knew outside investors had taken control, but they didn't know who. The paperwork listed shell companies with generic names: Pacific Holdings, Crescent Investments, Harbor Capital. The Monday after Thanksgiving was scheduled to be the reveal. I'd planned it carefully, working with Meridian's legal team for months. New ownership would be announced. A mandatory all-hands meeting. The beginning of a complete operational restructuring. But Dad's phone buzzing at Thanksgiving dinner moved up the timeline. The email was from Richard Martinez, Nexus's CFO, a career professional who'd been with the company for 15 years and watched helplessly as it declined under my father's stubborn leadership. Richard had been one of the few people at Nexus who knew the identity of the new majority owner. I'd met with him personally 3 months ago in my office at Meridian's Seattle headquarters to discuss transition planning. Miss Chin, he'd said, visibly shaken, I had no idea. Harold, your father, he talks about you sometimes. He says. I know what he says. Richard had the grace to look embarrassed. The board meeting Monday. You want full disclosure. Full disclosure. And Richard? I want my father and brother there. No exceptions. The email Richard sent to all Nexus employees, including Dad, was supposed to go out Friday evening, giving everyone the weekend to prepare. But Richard, in his nervousness about the whole situation, had scheduled it for Thursday at 6 p.m. instead. Thanksgiving dinner. Dad stared at his phone. His face cycled through colors I'd never seen, red to white to gray. Harold. Mom said. What is it? Dad looked up at me. For the first time in my life, my father looked at me and really saw me. Morgan, he said slowly, is your last name still Chin? Of course it is, Dad. Do you? He swallowed. Do you know anyone named Morgan Chin? In business. The table had gone quiet. David was frowning, trying to see Dad's phone screen. Why do you ask? Dad's hands were trembling. This email. From my CFO. There's a mandatory meeting Monday. With the new owner of my company. His voice cracked. Her name is Morgan Chin. 22 heads swiveled toward me. I took a sip of wine. That's impossible, David said, laughing nervously. It's a coincidence. There must be hundreds of Morgan Chins in business. Show me the email, Mom demanded. Dad handed over his phone. Mom read it, her face going pale. Morgan Chin, CEO of Meridian Systems. Majority shareholder of Nexus Technologies as of. She looked up. As of 18 months ago? Meridian Systems, Aunt Patricia said slowly. Isn't that the cybersecurity company? I read about them in Forbes. They're worth $2.8 billion, Uncle Richard finished. I follow their stock. The CEO is some kind of wunderkind. Started from nothing, built an empire in less than 10 years. He was pulling out his own phone now, typing rapidly. Morgan Chin. 31 years old. Graduate of. He stopped. Graduate of where? Cousin Michelle asked. Uncle Richard looked at me like he'd never seen me before. State University. Double major, computer science and business administration. Summa cum laude. The room fell silent. Dad's fork dropped again, this time bouncing off the table and hitting the floor. That's not possible, he said. Morgan can't. His phone rang. The caller ID showed. Richard Martinez, CFO. Dad answered with shaking hands, putting it on speaker without thinking. Harold. Richard's voice filled the dining room. I apologize for the timing of that email. It was supposed to go out tomorrow. But since you've seen it, I should let you know. Miss Chen, your daughter, I understand she's requested you and David attend the Monday meeting in person. Given the circumstances, she felt you should hear the restructuring plan firsthand. Restructuring plan? David grabbed the phone. What restructuring plan? I'm VP of Operations. No one told me about any restructuring. David. Richard's voice was careful. Miss Chen, Morgan, she owns 81% of voting shares. The board approved her operational plan unanimously. As of Monday, she'll be assuming the role of chairman. All C-suite positions are under review. Under review? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Harold. I really am. But the company was dying. Another 6 months and we'd have been in bankruptcy proceedings. Morgan, Ms. Chen, she saved 3,000 jobs. Her investment kept the lights on. Mom's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. How much, Dad said, did she invest? $94 million initially. Another $50 million in operational improvements over the past year. Total commitment of $144 million. David made a sound like he'd been punched. I have to go, Richard said. We can discuss details Monday. But Harold, I've seen the projections. Under Morgan's leadership, Nexus could be profitable within 18 months. She has a vision for the company you never. He stopped himself. I'll see you Monday. The call ended. 23 people stared at me. Dad's face had gone gray. Mom was gripping the table like she might collapse. David looked like he'd seen his own ghost. I set down my napkin. So, I said quietly, who wants dessert? The aftermath at dinner was chaos. Dad tried to speak several times but couldn't form words. Mom burst into tears. Not happy tears but the tears of someone whose entire worldview has collapsed. Aunt Patricia kept refreshing Google searches on her phone, reading headlines aloud. Meridian Systems CEO Morgan Chen named to Fortune 40 Under 40. Cybersecurity pioneer Morgan Chen closes $340 million acquisition. The woman behind the $2.8 billion tech revolution. David was the first to try to recover. Morgan. He forced a smile. This is incredible. I had no idea. We should talk. About the restructuring. I can help. I know that company better than anyone. Dad built it, but I've been running operations for 5 years. The operational review will be conducted by Meridian's transition team, I said. They'll evaluate all executive positions based on performance metrics. Performance metrics? David's smile faltered. I'm family. I'm your brother. You're an employee of a company I now own. Family doesn't factor into business decisions. Mom found her voice. Morgan, sweetheart, this is wonderful. We always knew you had potential. Remember when I said you should pursue computers? I always supported your interests. I looked at her. You called my coding obsessive. You suggested therapy. I was concerned. A mother worries. But look at you now. My successful daughter. She reached for my hand. We should celebrate. This weekend. A family celebration. I'm flying back to Seattle tomorrow morning. Board meeting next week. But Thanksgiving. I've had enough Thanksgiving. I stood. Excuse me. I walked out of the dining room. Behind me I heard Dad finally speak. She can't do this. It's my company. I built it from nothing. She can't just. She can, Uncle Richard said quietly. 81% ownership, Harold. She can do whatever she wants. The Monday meeting was held in Nexus's main conference room. 200 employees attended in person. Another 800 joined via video link from satellite offices. I arrived with my legal team, my CFO and my Chief Operating Officer, Sarah, who'd co-founded Meridian with me in her parents' garage 7 years ago. Dad and David were already there, sitting in the front row. Dad looked like he hadn't slept. David looked angry. Richard Martinez introduced me. Good morning. As you're aware, Nexus Technologies has been acquired by Meridian Systems. Today I'd like to introduce our new chairman and majority shareholder, Morgan Chen. I walked to the podium. The room was dead silent. Thank you, Richard. I'll keep this brief. Nexus Technologies has been mismanaged for over a decade. You've lost market share, client relationships, and, most importantly, the trust of your employees. 3,000 people depend on this company for their livelihoods, and leadership failed them. I didn't look at my father. Effective immediately, the following changes are in effect. First, Harold Chen is removed as CEO. He'll retain a ceremonial board seat with no voting power. Compensation will be reduced by 75%. Dad made a strangled sound. Second, all executive positions are under review. A transition team from Meridian will evaluate performance over the next 90 days. Positions that don't meet standards will be eliminated. David stood up. You can't do this. I'm your brother. You're an employee with a 5-year record of declining operational metrics. Sit down. David sat. Third, $50 million in additional investment will be allocated toward R&D and employee development. We're not here to cut jobs. We're here to build something sustainable. I saw tears on several faces in the audience. Relief. Hope. Finally, any employee who wants to discuss concerns about leadership or company culture can contact my office directly. Anonymous reports will be protected. This company operated as a fiefdom for too long. That ends today. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. David Chen's expense account is frozen pending audit. Our forensic team has identified approximately $847,000 in questionable charges over the past 3 years. Personal travel coded as business. Meals that exceed policy limits by 400%. We'll be seeking repayment. David's face went white. That's all. Thank you for your time. The weeks that followed brought a cascade of revelations. The forensic audit of David's expenses uncovered not just policy violations but outright fraud. $847,000 became $1.2 million when the full investigation concluded. Personal renovations billed to the company. A car lease disguised as equipment rental. Payments to a consulting firm that turned out to be owned by David's college roommate, with no evidence of actual consulting work performed. Meridian's legal team recommended prosecution. I declined, not out of mercy but practicality. A criminal case would damage the company and distract from the turnaround. Instead, David was terminated for cause and required to repay $1.2 million within 24 months. He couldn't afford it. Brittany's family money covered the first payment. The rest would come from selling the house Dad had bought them as a wedding present. Dad took the ceremonial board seat. He attended one meeting, said nothing, and resigned the following week. The man who'd built Nexus couldn't bear to watch someone else, especially me, run it. Mom called repeatedly. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that progressed from cheerful, "Let's have lunch. I'm so proud," to desperate, "Morgan, please, your father isn't well," to angry, "After everything we did for you," to pleading, "I'm your mother. Doesn't that mean anything?" It meant something. That was the problem. The rest of the family chose sides. Aunt Patricia, who'd been kindest to me as a child, reached out with a genuine apology. I met her for coffee and discovered she'd been defending me quietly for years, pushing back against my parents' dismissal in ways I'd never known. Uncle Richard tried to leverage our connection for investment in his struggling car dealership. I declined politely. Cousin Michelle never paid back that $8,000. I didn't mention it. Some debts aren't worth collecting. By January, Nexus Technologies had signed 3 new major clients. By March, we'd launched a revamped product line. By June, 7 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, the company posted its first profitable quarter in 4 years. Dad called in July. I was in my office reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant buzzed. "Miss Chen, your father is online too. He says it's important." I stared at the blinking light for a long moment. "Put him through." "Morgan." His voice was older than I remembered. Smaller. "I wanted Your mother and I wanted. He stopped. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Apologize. Acknowledge. Whatever the word is for admitting you were wrong about your own child for 30 years. I waited. I told myself you weren't suited for business because it was easier than admitting I couldn't see what was right in front of me. David is, a reflection of me. My ego. My image. You were something I didn't understand, so I decided you weren't worth understanding. He was crying. I could hear it in his breath. Your company, what you built. It's extraordinary, Morgan. The turnaround you're doing at Nexus. The restructuring plan. I've been reading the reports. It's everything I tried to do and failed. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. Finally. Too late. But I see you. I looked out my window at the Seattle skyline. 23rd floor. Corner office. Everything I'd built while being invisible to the people who should have seen me first. Dad, I'm going to say something and I need you to really hear it. Okay. I don't hate you. I don't hate Mom or David. Hate would require energy I don't have for people who never gave me theirs. Morgan. What I feel is distance. Permanent distance. You had 30 years to know me and you chose not to. That choice has consequences. I'm not interested in punishment, but I'm not interested in pretending those years didn't happen either. He was silent. You can have a relationship with me. A real one. But it starts from zero. No assumptions. No shortcuts. No, but we're family. Family is earned, Dad. You taught me that by withholding it. What do I do? Show up. Consistently. Not for what I can give you but because you actually want to know who I am. Ask questions and listen to the answers. Accept that I might not trust you for a very long time, maybe ever. I can do that. We'll see. I hung up. That night I had dinner with Sarah, my co-founder, at our favorite restaurant in Seattle. We'd been through everything together. The garage days, the near bankruptcies, the triumphs, the magazine covers, the loneliness of success. So, she said, pouring wine, how's the family drama? Ongoing. Dad called today. Apologized. For real. Seemed like it. Time will tell. And David. Selling his house. Brittany's furious. Apparently, she didn't know about the expense account situation. Sarah laughed. Golden child tarnished. Something like that. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. The restaurant was quiet, just a few other tables occupied. I'd bought it 3 years ago as an investment. The chef didn't know her silent partner was one of her regular customers. You know what I keep thinking about? I said. That coding camp when I was 12. The one Mom wouldn't let me attend. The one that started everything? I taught myself instead. Library books. YouTube tutorials. Staying up until 2 a.m. because it was the only time I could use the computer without someone telling me it was unhealthy. I twirled my wine glass. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if they'd supported me. If I'd gotten that $2,400 camp. The encouragement. The belief. You might have been just like them, Sarah said. Comfortable. Dialed. Average. Maybe. Or maybe you'd still be you, just happier getting there. I considered that. A version of Morgan Chin who knew her parents loved her, believed in her, saw her. A version who didn't have to prove her existence through achievement. I like who I am, I said finally. I just wish it hadn't cost so much. Sarah raised her glass. To expensive lessons. To expensive lessons. We clinked glasses. Outside, Seattle glittered in the summer darkness. My city, my success, my life built brick by brick while no one was watching. I had a $2.8 billion company, 3,000 employees at Nexus depending on my leadership, and a family that finally saw me but 30 years too late. And somehow sitting there with Sarah I realized it was enough. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just enough. I'd spent my whole life being invisible to the people who should have seen me first. Now I was exactly who I'd always been, just visible. And visibility, I'd learned, changes everything.